Okay, so one of the joys of my work is the people I get to meet and the stories we get to tell and the campaigns we get to promote and things. And you're one of those people, man, that you've got a story, you're doing stuff, and I don't even know where to start. So how about we kick things off with just an elevator speech? Imagine that we've never met before and say, hey, I'm Stuart, who are you and what do you do?
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for having me. Always a pleasure to visit with you, Stuart, as well. So my name is Sebastian Alvarez. I currently work with my family with Alvarez Construction company. We've been in business for about 35 years. I'm the youngest of the family. My siblings will start with my dad, who will be a part of this story as well. But my parents have passed away. My dad, Jairo Alvarez. We're an immigrant family. My mother as well, Anita Alvarez. My brother, Carlos. My sister, Anna, and then myself. So we build about 200 to 300 homes here in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. We do a lot of charity work. Our heart is in St. Jude. We build the St. Jude home. I think we're going on our 28th or 29th year. In our Oak Colony subdivision.
So that is a thorough introduction. Yes. So for those locals in Baton Rouge and the surrounding areas, this is the Alvarez that's on all the residential development signs. So that's the construction company.
Yes.
The St. Jude thing, the sentence, we do the St. Jude home, does not do that work justice. But let's maybe start there. So
last time we talked about St. Jude, Stuart, you made me cry.
Yeah, but that was intentional for a video. No, I just want to know, so how many years you been doing that?
I think we're confidently about we're 29 years. Actually being involved in the St. Jude, but actually building homes. We're at 28, 29 built homes for the St. Jude Dream Home Foundation.
And so the public probably get connected to that St. Jude project when the home is given away. So
yes.
There's a lot of PR surrounding that.
So that's the buzz, yeah.
It never ends.
It never ends.
I mean, you're starting with a blank lot and you just all year long you're building the next one.
Yeah, so it's fantastic. We've just what we bring into production home buildings, we figured it out with St. Jude. So and Dad used to always say this whenever he was alive, that, before we give away the St. Jude home, we need to have a lot and floor plan selected for the next one.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what we've always done. So while we're building the house, we already are talking about where we're going to build the next one. So essentially what we do is we build that house with the support of the community and our trade partners. So the framer donates his labor, the lumber company donates the lumber. We coordinate the building for almost at a zero cost for St. Jude, and then St. Jude raffles that home off.
Right.
And that's how they raise the funds.
So that kind of hints at some of the scale. So let's move to Alvarez Construction Company. Sure. So what sort of scale are you operating? How many homes are you building in a year to be able to just kind of fit that in and it not be like everything you do?
So my sister, Anna, she gets most of the credit for being the engine behind pushing the St. Jude Dream Home. So It fits in right with the fold. It's not a question of how hard is it to fit the St. Jude Dream Home on a scale. Whenever we're building 300 homes a year, that's probably the house that we need to really focus on no matter what. Cool. It's kind of weird. I almost say the St. Jude Dream Home is almost like having like a little brother and sister, and like we just have to take care of it.
Right. And you do that as a community.
We
with
do
all
it
your
as a
trade
community.
partners.
Yes.
It's a very cool thing.
Yeah, it's super cool, and we've gotten pretty good at it.
Okay, so how on earth did you end up in the construction business?
So of course, like my brother and sister all had their own paths. My brother started. I have to speak synonymously with my siblings because it's not just me in this operation. So, Carlos started, we're immigrant family. We came here with basically not much. Yeah. Our first attempt, Dad's first attempt on making our family successful was with an ice cream shop called Umbrellas.
Okay. And where did you immigrate from?
Colombia, South America. 1984.
Okay.
I was 2.5 years old.
Wow.
And Dad tried to set up an ice cream shop. And we ran that ice cream shop for 7 years. Well, I'd say I was a young kid.
Well, you enjoyed it.
But we were all there. Like Mom did her part, Carlos did his part, Anna did her part. I was, still a young kid at the time. Long story short, Dad had high hopes to build here in the United States in the 80s. But that was a terrible time during the economic crisis. Interest rates were super high, and the construction industry wasn't moving. So that project basically failed. But within that time frame that our family was here, Dad made strategic networking with people. So builder and developers, title attorneys, insurance agents.
Did he always know that he wanted to get into construction?
He always kind of knew.
Okay.
So he found out that passion in Colombia. There's some things that I'm going to say. You're just going to have to read the book if you're interested. That's what because it's a unpacking.
I'm trying to work back there, but I mean this right here. So
it's a lot.
So I mean, your dad, your family, your journey has been published.
Yeah.
And so I mean, it's not many guests we have on that. So No Such Thing as Impossible is the title of your book. And would you say this is your dad's book or this is your family's book?
It's Dad's book. And I was having lunch today with a developer and my siblings before I got here.
Yeah.
And I was telling that the cool thing about Dad's book is the way he framed it was his dad's teachings on how to live his life. And then those teachings, Dad carried them on.
When did he write this book?
Oh gosh, I would say right around 2006, 2007. You'd have to fact check me on that.
So he's towards the end of his life and he decides to write this.
So it was Dad's first round with cancer. After prostate cancer, I think my brother really put the pressure on him to say, hey, Dad, like it's Carlos tried to record some of his stories before he went into surgery for prostate cancer.
Okay.
And then when Dad was done with the prostate cancer surgery and everything was clean, he was like, okay, I need to write something.
So then he committed himself to write this book.
Where
do you want to start on this? Because this right here is, excuse my French, one hell of a story, man. So where does this begin?
Well, so it kind of where I left off. So, well, shoot, where does it begin? It begins in the mountains of Colombia. Sun was the town that he was born in, a small potato farming community. Dad was one of 11. And early in his life, Dad was the oldest one. So he experienced like the no toilets, the outhouse, the no power. His younger siblings didn't have that. But Dad was grown up in that environment, cows, chickens, and think of like Lassie, rural Colombia. And his dad took him to go see the military parade in Colombia, in Bogota. And Dad just fell in love with the military.
Okay.
At age of 15, he was dropped off at the military cadet school. And this is where it brings in synergy with his dad. Dad asked my grandfather, hey, Dad, like, give me some advice. I'm about to be dropped off at military cadet school. And his dad said, son, I don't know anything about the military. He said, the only thing I can tell you is ask yourself if what you're doing is correct. And if it is, do it better and faster than anyone else. So that kind of like sets off the tone, right? Of like, okay, with this little nugget, I can basically accomplish anything and nothing's impossible.
Yeah.
So Dad was very successful. Dad was a math genius. So, he worked his way up through the artillery. He could do calculations really quick. He was head of the artillery. He worked his way up to be head of the presidential guard.
Head of the presidential guard in Colombia.
So Dad would always say that the same person that cut the president at the time of Colombia, cut his hair and shined his shoes, also cut my dad's hair and shined his shoes. So just think of back in those times, there wasn't like the Secret Service in Colombia because it wasn't as advanced as the United States Secret Service. And
who was the president at the time in Colombia?
I think it was Yergas Camargo. I think we'd have to look at the book, right? Fact check me. So it's been a minute.
I'll ask Susan.
Ask Susan.
Our mutual friend who wrote the book.
Yeah. It was great to see her today. And as he rose in command, think about a decorated general, with a decorated sword and a whole team that paraded behind him to take care of the president of Colombia.
And that was your dad?
That was him. He was the boss. He was offered, and I'm put this in perspective. He was like 25, 26 at the time.
Okay.
Charge of the president. And he was offered $1 million to hand over the president, which was actually kind of cool. You can see the picture in the book.
By who?
By just a military coup.
Okay.
Right? I don't know specifics. We'd have to go deeper into the book. But basically, during those times, people were always trying to overthrow the government.
Yes.
Whether it was the guerrillas or other people trying to infiltrate the government.
Okay.
So that happened, and Dad decided to do the right thing, like Papacito always said, and he actually went and sort of committed treason because he went into these back meetings because he was kind of forced to. He felt trapped to gather information before he could even tell the right people.
Okay.
So, long story short, he exposed a coup, death threats on his life. And the Colombian military said, you need to get to the United States as soon as possible. Dad was like, perfect. I have a brother who happens to be in Albany, New York, that just avoided the draft, and I can live with him. And within a few days, Dad was on a military cargo jet to Miami, dropped off in Miami in I think it was late 60s, early 70s, where Spanish wasn't even a main language in Miami. He was dropped off with a typewriter, a leather jacket, and some Ray-Bans, and he sold them all for $100. Marched his way up to Albany Business School in New York with his brother, and started school without knowing the language. Talked to a statue of Moses because he had to practice. The story in the book says that the homeless people at the park used to think Dad was crazy because he was talking to a statue. Didn't make it into college at first because of the language, kept studying, finally made it in, graduated Albany Business College. That story in itself was the no such thing as impossible mentality, because Dad had to use a kerosene pot to cook carrots and potatoes to eat, mistakenly bought cat food because he couldn't read correctly, ate cat food. And just the struggles of going to New York with $100 just to pay for your school, figure out the language. Graduated top of his class in accounting. Decided to fly back to Colombia. Again, like I said, an accounting mind. Worked his way up as a controller for a subsidiary of Nabisco, which was a company in Colombia that fabricated metal parts to create toasters, blenders, and kitchen appliances.
And this is back in Colombia.
Back in Colombia. So Dad had a connection with that company from Nabisco in Florida, which was Mr. Raymond. He's another cool thing that Susan and Dad did this book is that Dad dedicated to his angels. Dad always felt like there was terrestrial angels, in a sense that people that he would meet throughout his life that would move his life forward. We call it networking today.
Yeah.
But Dad really believed that that's almost like a divine instance, because who would have thought that Mr. Bob Richardson, who's passed away now, used to get yogurt at the ice cream shop, would be the person to give my dad a business in a box because he loved my dad serving him ice cream as a regular. So Bob Brooks was a big part of Dad's story. So I know I'm skipping around here, but so Dad worked his way up, top controller in the company for Nabisco, and met my mom. Mom was 19 and Dad was 29, right? So there were a big age difference there. Story in the book goes that Dad was on his way to drop his brother off at a party on his way to a date. Dad dropped off his brother, saw that there was a couple little girls gathered in the front, and his brother said, "Hey, Ira, before you go to the date, why don't you come check out this party?" And Dad saw my mom, and that was it.
That was it.
And so they got married.
And this is while he's working Nabisco in Colombia?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and then he married her, I think it was like 3 months. And
when you know, you know.
You know, when you know, you know. And then fast forward, had Carlos, had Anna, and then had myself. And this kind of leads into the construction industry. So at that point in time...
So hang on a second. So just back along. So he's working at Nabisco. Like, how many years had passed between him initially leaving Colombia because he had death threats, so then coming back working for Nabisco? What was that duration like about?
Oh, Stuart, you're really asking me these questions. I would say a period of maybe 10 years. So Dad finished the military probably like 27, 28, met my mom whenever he was 29.
Okay.
So I would say 10. Let's say,
all right, trying to get a sense of
timeline. Yeah.
And I was wondering earlier on, how was his English when he first came to America, when they dropped him off in Miami? Like,
there was no English.
So that's why he was speaking to the statue to learn English and stuff.
Yeah.
Because I don't know, if you haven't traveled, it's really hard to wrap your mind around just how big a culture shock like America is.
It is.
So you imagine in the 70s going from, military life at the highest levels in Colombia to then being essentially just a person, a citizen.
Well, and that's the interesting parts of Dad's book, is because he goes from periods of like being this young kid to moving up in the ranks, to eating cat food in Albany, to going back to Colombia, working a career ladder to be a head controller.
Yeah, just
starting a family, and then coming back to the United States in 1984 when this whole drug thing was going on.
What's the drug thing?
We have to get there. So, so we'll get through the construction part first.
Okay, go ahead.
So Dad was one of his brothers, who was a veterinarian, Josue, had some free time, and Dad saw opportunity in building what we call in Colombia fincas, which we call camps here, like you're camping in Falls River.
Okay.
But this is like a camp in Falls River, but it's in the mountains of Colombia. It's a weekend house. So Dad would start building a finca for the family. And then a mafioso, a drug lord, would stop by and say, "Hey, I like your house. Like, you're doing a good job. Can I buy it?" And Dad was like, "Sure." So cool. So, he did it once, he did it twice. And then he was like, "Well, I think I got this kind of building thing down." So then Dad built very small little apartment complexes. And this is while he was working at Landers, which is the Nabisco. And he had a knack for it. So in the back of his mind, he felt like that was sort of his calling.
Okay.
So that's how we found our way into like the construction industry, right? As a family, while he was raising the family.
I mean, it sounded like if he's got a family, he's building homes to put his family in. So it's maybe like a hobby / talent / family needs.
Moonlighting.
Okay.
Like it's something that you're doing on the side.
And then people just showed up to buy those things he was building, and then boom.
Yeah.
Epiphany.
Perfect. Epiphany. And then the drug thing. So 1980s, we all know that there's an issue with cocaine, Pablo Escobar, these mafiosos and drug lords blowing up vehicles in Colombia, blowing up airplanes in flight, trying to blow up government buildings, money laundering, crime, death, like this whole cloud of the drug war.
My son would say Colombia became a little sketch.
It became super sketch. So it became unsafe.
Okay.
Right. So the whole country was clouded in all this. And, Dad said, "I don't want to give my kids an education here. I want them to have the type of education that I experienced in the United States." So my dad woke up one morning basically and told my mom, we're going to move to the United States. Everybody needs to pack at least one suitcase. He told my mom, I said, "Pick anywhere you'd like to go. because if I made it once there, I'll make it again. And this was no plan of like ice cream shop, because that's part of the story. Have we talked about the ice cream shop yet?
You touched
Oh, yeah, okay, we did. And residential home building, but he just knew that we had to go, and that's one thing that Dad always had. His vision wasn't short term. It was like long term, right? Everything that he did. And so we moved. My mom happened to have a sister that lived in Baton Rouge, because her husband worked for a company that was a sister company for Exxon Mobil that worked in Colombia, and he was working at an Exxon plant in Baton Rouge.
And so it was that connection why you ended up here in Baton Rouge?
So Dad was like, let's go to Baton Rouge. So going back to the story of Landers, the Nabisco subsidiary, Mr. Raymond was the American counterpart of my dad, or his boss, in Miami.
Okay.
Or Fort Lauderdale. That's where Mr. Raymond lived. So they made a good relationship. They would travel to Africa to negotiate metal and parts for Nabisco. Dad was actually got to ride on the Concorde to go to Colombia whenever he was a controller there. But anyway, so we went to go visit Mr. Raymond, and we bought and I remember this, I was 2.5. It was a gold Chevy Celebrity van, like station wagon.
Okay.
And we got into that thing, and we drove to Baton Rouge.
Nice.
And then Dad started the ice cream shop because the economy was bad. So now we're kind of going back. And then that's after we failed again, or we failed, we started the construction company. At that time, I was still in middle school. Carlos was just finishing his master's in business administration. So Dad built his first house kind of by himself, and then told Carlos, like, hey, I think we can make a little living out of this if we made, $20,000 on one house. What if we do 2 a year? What if we do 3 a year? What if we do 4 a year? And then Carlos started working with my dad. Carlos was more in office. Dad was out in the field. And then we just kind of grew from there. My story goes, I was always kind of with the construction company, cleaning up job sites, cleaning up all the spec homes. They were for sale, cutting grass, doing all those things. And then Dad invited me to do a landscape for a house. And I kind of liked it because it had to do with plants and design. And that's the way my mind works. And one day Dad said, hey, look, we're going to do another landscape, but I want you to do it. I don't want to be involved. He said, here's $1,000, and you know where to buy the plants. You have the truck. You have the small trailer. You know where the house is. You know that you have friends at your high school. He said, I'm going to give you $1,000. Buy all the materials. Pay off all your friends. Do the landscape. Whatever's left over is yours. I was like, okay.
Got a bachelor's degree in business management right there.
And so, it was cool. So I did the first house, and then I think the second house I did it with just me and one friend.
Yeah, right.
And I was
you figured that out real fast. I get more money.
So, I dedicated myself to landscape architecture at LSU. It was a 5-year program. I graduated there, and when I graduated at LSU, I focused my first 2.5 years to the construction company. I did a little bit of design work, freelancing design work here and there, but I really dedicated 2 years to just learning the business because we were just getting into land development.
Okay.
So I was more in charge of, some operational things within the company, but I was also managing the big engineering contracts that actually, took down the trees, put the roads in, put the sewer in, putting the water in, and managing that land development stuff. So I learned a whole lot. And I worked alongside some very great engineers, some who have even passed away now. Mr. John Graves with Evans and Graves Engineering and his whole staff. And from very young, I learned a lot from people much older than me.
What was your sister doing as your older brother kind of got into the administrative side of the company? It sounds to me like your dad was the kind of hands-on, like the building side of this.
Yeah.
Is that the case?
Yeah, so Anna had good synergy with my dad because she started off with like writing checks and then working with dad on the accounting side.
So she's the money side.
So the way that we're set up right now, is Carlos is more the visionary for the company, in charge of sales. Mm-hmm. I'm acting more as the COO of the company. And then my sister, we call it the CFO. So, but now we're good. We have great people working under us. We have a full leadership team.
Yeah, your new office building. I don't know when you built that up. Spectacular.
Yeah, 2 years ago.
It's at Highland.
Burbank.
Yeah,
Highland
and Burbank.
Good visibility. Yeah. So Anna got to work with Dad on. She was all about the QuickBooks file. So, and that kind of matured to, the banking relationships and making sure the draw schedules and making sure the money in and money out is correct and those things.
So you always, I find, I got a lot ahead of me and I know you do too, but just looking back on the life that you've lived, it's like if there's no way you could have mapped that journey out and you look backwards, you think, wow, that was a series of events. So what do you think it was about your dad or, that got you here? Because it's one day at a time, right? It's one day at a time. It's every journey that we take. But and it sounds to me like passion and need and drove, the next step in the journey. But then once you found this construction thing, to go from that to, one of the area's biggest builders, it's...
Well, I think that in some of this stuff might sound redundant because I hear like a lot of people do it, but until you kind of like live it. But man, like you just got to be ready to fail. Like, and that's, if you look at Dad's trajectory, like it was failure while being relentless. Mm. Does that make sense?
It does.
So like a lot of people fail at a point where there's no relentlessness. Like they just cave. Mm. Right. But it's like, I feel like in my dad's journey, everything that he did was a fight to the finish. And even Susan could write a book on just the last 18 months that Dad was on this earth, on how he fought his last battle with cancer. It's crazy. Mm. That man went down swinging. And when some people give up, like that's where Dad would never quit. So Dad had this thing to, like, if there was a finish line, Dad figured out how to get way past that finish line, right? And so I think that the ability for him to clear the noise and face that adversity, and also seeing Dad as an example for me personally, because, if you ask me, it's different than Anna and it's different for Carlos, but for my perception as being the youngest, I saw my dad like suffering from like stress and anxiety, man. Like it was just, he would always like revert to his like yoga techniques, his breathing, his meditations, laying out on the floor, doing this thing called yoga nidra. I don't know if you know that, but it's basically channeling, energy through your body and breath work and things like that. Because, whenever we were working at the ice cream shop, we were open 7 days a week. And Dad was there 6 and would take rest on Sundays. But it was from literally 8 a.m. to 11 p.m. running the ice cream shop. Doubts, concerns, trying to find money for Carlos and Anna and I to go to school. And so I got like the front row seat to all that. So I feel like it was such a blessing from God that I was able to even just witness that. But I don't know if that answers the question, but, Dad always said, and it comes from Papacito again, that, Papacito told Dad, because he wasn't very wealthy, he said, son, I'm not going to leave you anything. I'm going to leave you 2 things. I'm going to leave you an education and my example, right? So Dad left us like such a good example, man. Like it's just, and then you kind of go back and you analyze, and I didn't realize that until Dad passed away.
Yeah.
And Dad used to always say that, like, it's my example, like you should lead by example. But that doesn't resonate for you until that example's gone.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh wow, like now I understand what it means to lead by example, because that's all you got.
Yeah.
The material things gone, man, but your example can stay here like for eternity.
Sure.
So
You have kids yourself?
I do have one beautiful little girl, Arabella Lane.
How's that going?
It's good. She's great, man. We're blessed. I tell my wife, Erin, all the time. I said, I don't know how we got so lucky. I don't even know if we're doing this right, but it seems like we are.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
All right. Well, what's the title of this book? It's No Such Thing as Impossible.
Yep.
And is this available? Like, if someone wants to buy this, where can they go to get this book?
So I think that the best way is probably to reach out to me personally.
Okay.
Through our website, Alvarez Construction, or find me on Facebook or Instagram. Right now, the book's not being published. I would say the first attempt is go on Amazon. There's some copies being sold on there. But I'd love to even meet with Susan and see how we can get this book cranked back up again.
Well, I think she would love to have that conversation, man. We just scratched the surface of the story. I mean, I remember I was interviewing your brother for some Alvarez thing a couple of years back, and we ended up talking about this for like an hour. It's a fascinating story.
Yeah, thank you.
And you must be real proud. It's a real legacy piece, and it's just you're a great family.
Thank you, man.
I think
I appreciate you.
You've got quite a wonderful thing going on,
Yeah.
and I'm enjoying watching your success.
Yeah, thank you, Stuart. Appreciate you guys.
All right, all the best, man.
Thank you.